Hey Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Dujon Smith, who is co-lead Black Founders Development Program, Senior Manager at Accenture, and CEO and founder of My Black Skin. Dujon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh man, first off, I just want to say your title is long, right? And that means with a long title, that means a lot of history and a lot of struggle and light that's going to be shed in this conversation. So I'm looking forward to diving in and hearing a lot more about your journey. But before we actually touch base on that, just give the listeners an opportunity to kind of know a little bit more about your upbringing, where you're from, where's your background.
Perfect. So I'm Dujon Smith. As you said earlier, I grew up on the northern side of Chicago, the northern suburbs, Evanston, Illinois, to be exact, from a wonderful and beautiful Jamaican household. My mom and dad are both Jamaican, so, first generation American repping for the Caribbean, but had a wonderful time, sort of growing up and navigating worlds, in the mighty middle of the United States, specifically here in Chicago, and just kind of traversed through the world until I kind of found myself in this new space where, as Issa Rae would say, I get to root for everybody Black in my professional and my personal life.
I like, well, that was a good introduction right there. I like that. I like that. Let's talk about, first off, Chirac, the brick city, right? Chicago, right there. I'm saying, so being born and raised out there, and also you said Caribbean background. Both parents are Jamaican. What part of Jamaica?
My mom's side of the family is from Havendale, and my dad's side is from Spanish Town.
Let's go.
It's all kind of like in the Kingston area, yeah.
Yeah, you don't know, Brethren. Big up yourself. Yes, my mother's from Portland, Jamaica, nice. And my father's from St. Lucia, Castro. So it's always an honor to have island blood, yachties on the interview and stuff, and just connection and stuff. Yes. Now, talk to us. What are some of the lessons you learned in your childhood that you feel is still like helpful in your life today?
One thing my mom always taught me growing up was manners will carry you through the world. And that is one thing that has rung true throughout my entire life. I think, as you were talking about earlier, with life, sometimes, especially for us Black and brown folks, there's a lot of trials and tribulations that we go through, as well as joy. When I don't want to discount the joy, but those trials and tribulations are real, especially being a Black man in America. But one thing that she told me, was just that manners will carry you through the world. And for me specifically, it literally did, and figuratively, just with opportunities that presented themselves to me. I've been able to go to 55 countries over like kind of a 17-year time frame, from high school until my 30s. And it was because of those lessons that my mom taught me growing up, just always having this curiosity to experience new people, places, cultures, ethnicities. And I know it's coming from a place of privilege. I didn't grow up with much, but to look back over all these years that I've been on this earth, to have seen so much of it has been truly a blessing.
And you mentioned a key word, culture. Like what does your culture mean to you?
My culture is so important. Jamaica is a small island, but out of many, we are one. And it's just so amazing. All the influential people around this world that have some sort of ties to Jamaica, whether it's from music, entertainment, sports, business, politics. We have really touched and influenced so much of this world just from the Caribbean. So being Jamaican, for me, I'm just so proud of it. I talk about it all the time. I got my little Jamaican necklace on, and Africa one as well, because I know where the boat started. But my culture is just very important. I think the Jamaican culture is just so unique and differentiated in the Caribbean and just around the world because of our global impact. So any chance I get, I always tell somebody my family and my roots are from Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. And you're so true about the Jamaican culture, about how it's like community, right? You
Hmm.
know, it's a small island, but you know, it's like any other island in the Caribbean. But the vibration of the Jamaican culture is always felt across the world. You know,
Hmm.
when you talk about the Caribbean islands, people always say Jamaica is like one of the top three, if anything like that.
Exactly.
And there's so many beautiful islands out there, but
Oh, there
for
is.
some reason, the Jamaican culture has really impacted a lot of the world. You know, whether
Hmm.
through entertainment, music, sports, but like Jamaicans have had their hands on a lot of things that have kind of
Hmm.
caused a pulse in this world, which is beautiful to know that we're a part of a culture like that that has a strong legacy, and we're a part of that legacy now. It's up to us to kind of like live on through that in our own ways, and I know that you're definitely doing that. But what were some of like the challenges that you dealt with as a young child coming up, to kind of shape you in your professional journey?
I think one thing, now that I'm older and looking back, I think so much happens in your childhood, where the trauma, as I was saying earlier, the joys, the triumphs that you reflect and realize that it's still having an impact on you today or how you navigate the world. And for me, I'm glad that we have normalized these conversations a bit more with the pandemic. But mental health was a huge thing. I know my mom suffered from some mental health issues that had an impact on our family and our dynamic. I ended up having to be, adopted for a period of time into another family. And, as they say, it takes a village to raise a child. I'm glad that I had that support system around me. But I think it was in dealing with my mom's mental health issues, my dad sort of being absent from the picture, and having to kind of mature pretty quickly in my early years,
Mm,
that, you know, gave me that resilience, that
mm,
emotional
mm,
fitness and maturity to kind of deal with whatever else life had thrown my way. I
mm,
think
mm.
probably between that like 15 to 17-year time frame, just so much has happened. But, as I always tell myself, diamonds are created with heat and pressure. And I feel like I got a lot of that heat and pressure in those years that
That's good.
formed me
That's
into
good.
yeah, that formed me into the man I am today. But then when you mix some of those trials and tribulations and that heat and pressure still with some of those softer aspects, as I was saying earlier with my mom, really just kind of nurturing me, telling me that manners will carry me through the world. So many better things actually came out of that.
True,
That
true.
phoenix coming out of the fire.
Yeah,
But for
yeah.
me, early on, it was just those dealings of dealing with mental health, with a parent, dealing with some of those abandonment issues that come with, having an absent father in your childhood. So those are some of the things that kind of shaped, I would say, some of the childhood trauma that allowed me to navigate the world a bit differently as an adult and
Hmm.
building that resilience and emotional fitness that I have today.
And as a child, like what were some of your aspirations growing up? Like
Uh,
what shaped your educational journey?
I would say for the longest time, I was a lot of immigrant parents, folks that are coming, as a first or second generation, doctor, lawyer, engineer. And for me, I was going to be a pediatric anesthesiologist. I knew it down to the T. I was like, they're going to make money. I'll be able to take care of myself, my family, and my community around me. This is going to be dope. I love working with kids. Um, so I really thought I was going to be a doctor. And I did everything within that way to kind of pursue that path, you know, studying and focusing on science in high school, trying to be in all of the honors and AP courses for biology and physics and chemistry, um, and physiology. But then I got to a point where I was like, all right, am I doing this because I want to do this or because this is what the world is telling me to do? And these are the only occupations that people know. But I'm like, I'm
Mm,
pretty sure a lot of people are making money and making a living and experiencing joy doing a lot of other things. So,
that's true. That's true. And when you go to like growing up, especially in the Caribbean background, a lot of the guests had expressed, I mean, I'm speaking from experience as well too, like doctor, lawyer, things that people back then during that time would probably be like, that's a safer bet, right? But
mm-hmm.
nothing in life
Yeah.
is safe. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like you could be at a corporate job and tomorrow you're fired. Like
Exactly.
it can
Yep.
happen. But it was just one of those things where like, okay, as long as you got a major and as long as you work towards that, maybe at that point in time it could work for you. So I get it. Now after college, like how did your career start? Like what were some of the challenges that you had to go through?
Um, for me, I went off to Pepperdine University out in Malibu, California, which was a beautiful like treat. Going from Chicago to being in Malibu, California, I was like, what? This is how people are living in this still same country. And I started, as I was saying, was still focused on trying to become a doctor and studying biology. But then I had that shift in knowing that entrepreneurship was probably something well suited for me. So I wanted to study international business. And Pepperdine, the reason why I went there was because of their international programs. And it was kind of like that seed that kept fueling my travel bug. You know, right before I went to Pepperdine, I got to study abroad in Vietnam and South Korea my senior year of high school, and I wanted to go to China next because I was looking at all the tags. I'm like, everything's made in China. What the fuck is going on in China? I need to go over there and see what's good.
Yeah. Smart move. Smart move.
Yeah. So I saw Pepperdine had an international program studying in China. So that's kind of what I went after. And I went to that school and got to do multiple international programs in Fiji, in China, touring around the Czech Republic, doing internships in London at the House of Commons for Parliament, as well as a tax accountant for Deloitte. So I think just having that diverse array of international experience just really got my gears going to say, one, there's more to life than being a doctor, lawyer, and engineer. Those are great occupations, but there's a lot of other things that people are doing in this world in serving all other enterprise functions. So my main thing, I think, in high school and then college and beyond was just this, how can I say yes to things that will allow me to have exposure and experience and then decide what I want to do for this next season of my life that's going to bring me joy and some sort of purpose. And that's kind of the mantra that I've been taking ever since.
Mm-hmm. And now, can you speak about your current role? Because that's what I want to kind of dive into next at Accenture. You know, some of the previous guests are also employed through Accenture. So, like, could you talk about your current role and what are you doing over there?
Yeah, so I'm at Accenture. I co-lead our Black Founders Development Program full-time. So this part of the group within Accenture, for those of you who don't know, Accenture has 750,000 employees around the world, doing all sorts of work from management consulting, IT services, like advertising, whatever it might be. I'm a part of the Accenture Ventures team, which is solely focused on investing and partnering with startups in the enterprise tech space. So anything from supply chain to cybersecurity to talent and HR tech that can be used by Fortune 500s. So my full-time job, as I was saying earlier, rooting for everybody Black. But what does that mean? I just try to find ways to help Black founders get cash and contracts, whether through the form of investment when we're talking about cash, like how can you get 250,000 to $1 million, you know, so that you can fuel your business and continue to scale, or contracts in the form of like partnership. How can Accenture work with you as a business and then take what you're building to Nordstrom, to Boeing, to Walmart, to whatever Fortune 500 company is out there that could utilize your tech services? So that's kind of my role in a nutshell. One, really just trying to find strategic investments for these Black founders in the form of cash and contracts. Two, really focus on how do we build community and share resources so that we know what's out there to help us thrive and grow and scale our businesses. And then finally, thought leadership. So how can I continue to dispel misconceptions, attract more Black founders to enterprise tech outside of other areas where we typically might, you know, pursue entrepreneurship, and really just, I think, to a point we hear time and time again, only 1% of VC funds are going to Black founders. So how do we know that narrative, but then also shift the mindset from being of scarcity to abundance and showing that there is opportunity? We just need to know about it and need to understand what resources we need to potentially grow in that space. So that's my job, just really spurring entrepreneurship and access to information and capital to Black founders that are out there globally.
That is amazing. You know, because a lot of the guests I previously said on previous shows, they're like, oh yeah, no, college was amazing, but the things that I really need to learn, I didn't even learn in college, you know? And I think that's a very hard thing as an entrepreneur. Like you're really just trying to find the right resources, no matter how good your product is or the voice that you want to kind of let it be heard. If you don't have the right resources, you could waste a lot of time and a lot of capital trying to do all of that. But to have someone like yourself who's done this on a continuous basis, right, helping to guide and to lead other individuals, Black and brown, you know, opening their business and guiding them, that truly does help, because then everyone's kind of streamlined going through a system where it's like, did you get that done? Did you find this out? Let's work. Let's raise some more capital. Like, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's good to know that there's even something out there, you know, to help individuals, you know, in all different walks of life, you know, when it comes down to that kind of stuff. Now, how does your program contribute to like empowering the Black community?
Really, it's around access to information, resources, and capital. Like that's the main thing that we're really focused on. If you're a Black founder, and let's say you're an executor and really not an idea generator, it's like how do you understand opportunities like tech transfer offices at institutions? Like there are universities out there that are sitting on a treasure trove of intellectual property, patents that could be commercialized to turn into real businesses. As a simple example, I went to Northwestern Law, and I met a wonderful Black founder who is licensing technology from Northwestern to create safer hair dyes for all people. That's something a lot of people don't know about. Like that you can go to a university and license intellectual property and then get funding from that same school to then bring that business idea to life. It's little things like this that I think are very important for us to know about outside of our sphere of influence and what we have access to. So really, I would say, yeah, the program is really just focused on how do we empower the Black community with information, access, and resources. And those resources can be, hard capital or
Yeah,
other things
always
just
good.
like, connections and just the network.
Is there a cap to how many people you could actually help? Because I know obviously at some point in time, resources sometimes run out.
Yeah, I would say overall, from an investment standpoint, holistically, like Accenture is only making 10 investments a year, so things are a bit tight that way. So, of the Black founders, they're going to get one of those 10 slots. That's where I would say some of the limit is. But then outside of that, from like just a community standpoint of just resources, information, that's as unlimited as it can be, to the point that I have the bandwidth and capacity to also support because I'm a lone wolf in this role. I do have the support of my wonderful executive sponsor, Kathy Ross. Shout out to her. But at the end of the day, there's only so many hours in a day, and so many
That is
founders that
true.
we can support at
That is
scale.
wow. And it's how many people that work in your office with you doing this?
So focus on Black founders. It's just me full
Oh,
time, and then I have an executive sponsor that is doing the broader Accenture Ventures team globally. There's probably around 40 of us around the world that are supporting entrepreneurs holistically, but I'm the only one that's rooting for everybody Black
okay, let's
as
go.
part of my day job.
I like that. I like that slogan right there. I think that's good. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
get like a shirt or a hat, some merchandise with that on it.
Oh, definitely.
uh, Now, I know that you've worked at various positions at
hmm
Accenture, like from anywhere from innovation, architect. Like,
hmm
how has your experiences working in several different fields shape and approach your entrepreneurship and innovation to owning your own business?
Um, it's really just shaped because I think being exposed to so many enterprise functions at Accenture and just seeing how other businesses are working, especially these Fortune 500s, understanding like payment terms of businesses and like that whole supply chain, it really got me thinking like, wow, I could possibly do this. And I'm gaining a lot of information that I can take to support my business, moving forward, even if it's in a different space. People always laugh now because by day I do enterprise tech, but at night I'm doing beauty with my block skin. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it was because of that information that I was gaining from my time at Accenture that really helped me to understand and kind of dispel like some of the myths that I was like, oh man, this is going to be hard. Like, how am I going to get this role or how am I going to get this contract or understand what this supplier can do for me and like negotiating these things. But I think just in my day job, being exposed, especially at Accenture, when you're in management consulting or IT services, you get exposed to all these different clients and all these different industries and enterprise functions. So I'm learning about cybersecurity over here. I'm learning about finance and accounting and procurement in this space. And what does it mean to build out a supply chain, especially if you're making like a beauty product? Who's manufacturing it? What does it cost you to make that? How much is it going to cost you to ship it from where it's manufactured to where your customer is? Like all of that insight I was kind of gaining at the enterprise level at Accenture and then taking it down for me at the small business level, which, I hope to obviously grow this into a larger enterprise in the future. But I think just that access and exposure to information and how businesses work from the inside out really helped me to just kind of dispel my own misconceptions that I could do this thing too.
Mm, 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 mm. Now, with all that being said, like this is where your side hustle comes in, right?
hmm
And and we're gonna dive into this and talk a lot about it, and I want to kind of know a little bit more about like, can you share like your personal journey of growing from the role of at the in the corporate level, right, to becoming an entrepreneur and owning your own business? Like, how was that transition? I know a lot of the stuff that you learned in the Accenture, like you're utilizing it now, right? But like, how was that journey? Like taking that leap of faith and saying, "All right, I'm gonna start this now."
Yeah, for me, this wasn't necessarily my first rodeo. I'd been trying a few things from college until now and just waiting for something to stick. So, while I was in college, I thought I was going to create the next Snapchat, Facebook, because I saw, every other Caucasian male, raising money and millions of dollars to do things. So I was like, oh, I'm going to launch this app to help college students, and savings and tapping into their discretionary spending power. I learned some stuff. We did, some cool things like trying to get the app developed, but it didn't get to the point where, it was sustainable. So then I put that on pause
Mm,
and started working again, getting a 9 to 5 to get some money to fuel the next idea. Then, as I
okay.
was, alluding to earlier, I love traveling and experiencing new people, places, and culture. And after I went to my 40th country before, like now I'm at 55, I was like, I want to inspire people to
Come
travel. And I
on.
love the whole business model. Thank you. Of like Tom Shoes and Warby Parker and One Hope Wine, where you buy one and you give one. I was like, okay, what if people buy these suitcases and then it creates scholarships or grants for other underprivileged youth to go experience a new part of the world? So then, I found a guy that could do the product design and engineering and bring my idea to life, and learned, okay, cool, this is how you bring in a co-founder that can do the work for you. And then you don't necessarily have to pay them because, he could usually charge 65,000. Shout out to Bo Reed, to do the work. But he came on as a co-founder and did that for equity in the company. That's when I was first learning about, bring on more people, have equity, share that so you don't have to dispel the cash if you don't necessarily have the cash at this point in time. And then, I launched on Kickstarter because then I saw like crowdfunding was a new thing because I didn't have a rich uncle or auntie that could give me $50,000 to bring my idea to life. I was just bootstrapping and getting people to
Mm-mm.
like come in and do logos and designs. And then, I needed $150,000, but I only raised like 33,000 for my little friends and family. And I was like, wow, I felt defeated, but it was another learning lesson. Like, cool, people were interested. And then, I saw later on, shout out to Away and other connected luggage lines that are booming, but they had a different story, than I did and had different access to information and capital than I did. But I didn't want that to be the end all be all. So I had my designs. I thought it was sleek. I was like, this is cool. This needs to be everywhere. I ended up applying for a design patent and getting a design patent. So then that got me interested in intellectual property. Because now I'm like, oh, people are making money. Apple sued the heck out of Samsung when they infringed on their iPhone design. That's when I was learning about like, okay, you can get something designed if you have a great idea, get it patented, and then maybe license it to someone else and have them build it. You just make money, but you don't have to have the capital to truly bring it to life. But if you have that idea, you're able to secure the right protection for it, it can still be lucrative for you. And then you got to
Mm-hmm.
spend all the time and energy manufacturing it. So that was the second one. Then the third one, by the time I got to My Block Skin last year, I was in New York and I was inspired by how beauty hair care has become a lot more inclusive. Seeing like Shea Moisture, Sundial, Scotch and Porter, Bevel, Meal Organics, Black Girl Sunscreen, all these brands that are coming out right now. Some doing really well, getting in big box retailers, others being acquired for multi-million, hundreds of millions of dollars. I was like, this is great. For me, going back to those Jamaican roots, you remember Bob
Mm-hmm.
Marley,
Mm-hmm.
suffering from
Yeah.
skin cancer and melanoma. And then
Yep.
I looked
Yep.
across the market and I'm like, I love what Black Girl Sunscreen is doing, Supergoop, all those, but I haven't seen a brand speak to men of color. As it relates to protecting their skin. And there's a lot of misconceptions as it relates to us needing SPF because we think, oh, we got melanin. We don't need that. That's for, lighter toned individuals. But at the end of the day, all of us, regardless of your skin tone and ethnicity, need SPF protection. It has a lot of great benefits. And we don't need to be out here dying from skin cancers and melanomas because that's what the data and statistics are saying. We might be less likely to get it, but we're 5 times more likely to die from it compared to our white male counterparts. So for me, that was kind of why I created My Block Skin, was to bring men of color into the conversation. But at this point, now I'm thinking back to College Bounty, back to my Fenvi luggage. I'm like, what did I learn from each of those things? All right, intellectual property, make sure I get my trademarks and my slogans and my designs right. All right, cool. From a funding perspective, what do I know now that I didn't know before? Ooh, let me talk to family offices and high net worth individuals outside of VC and other areas where are typically glamorized and trying to get funding. Oh, I have a product now. I can do revenue-based financing. All these things sort of came together for me now in this third baby that's still in its infancy, but is doing really well because I've been leveraging capital, community, and connections to really bring this thing to life. I launched at
Yeah.
Soho House Festival in July,
Come on.
which had a great thing because I was sitting on their board for the last 2 years, supporting their inclusivity initiatives. And then we secured a deal with the NFL to be their official sunscreen in the UK and Ireland market, and then doing some stuff in North America with their NFL Academy, all with this mission to educate men of color on the importance of SPF protection, but still having product that works from porcelain to espresso skin tones. Because, at the end of the day, everybody needs it. So I got to make some money. So the product's for all, but I want to bring men of color into the conversation.
Yeah. This journey sounds beautiful. Just listening
Yeah.
to it, just hearing, and I know obviously you're kind of, breaking it down in a smaller terms, but like I can only imagine the amount of days, hours, nights spent putting this together, and to see it all come to fruition and actually seeing that it's actually helping black and brown men of color, that's beautiful to know that you're contributing to a community. Yes, you can contribute to yourself or to your family, and that's probably the first community right there within your life. But like when you commit to a larger community and service a larger community, I think that's a very beautiful position to be in.
It really is.
You get to influence them.
And you can't do anything alone. All this stuff is because I had a team and people around me. That was one thing I learned as me growing up and dealing with life stuff. It takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a team and a village to grow and scale a business. So regardless if things panned out, failed or not, always having a team was just the main thing. Is like, how can I surround myself with the right people to take this idea that I have in my head and execute it in the best way that we know how we can do it. So having that team. So shout out to all the people that have been on the journey, whether funding, getting partnerships, or, helping me scale and grow these businesses. That's been the main important thing for me, is like not doing this alone or feeling like I can't share. Because at the end of the day, we all got to eat, and there's enough pie to go around. We just got to know how to grow it.
That is true.
Together.
And having the resources. Yeah, come on, you better preach today. You better preach. And when you have those resources and the knowledge and having people like yourself joining a team like that, things happen, and they happen pretty fast because things are aligned. It's like when you don't have the right foundation and you start to just say, look, I just want to open up a business I just feel like this is what I should be doing. You did a lot of groundwork prior. You worked on yourself for years on end in order to get the knowledge to make the right decisions when it came to your company. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that like it's not just about like, oh yeah, I have a nice product and I want to put it out there. It's well thought out. And from the way you broke it down it wasn't like you were like, oh, I just had this idea and I launched it. It was like, no, we did this and then we did this. And then after that, we waited a couple of months until we did this. And I'm like, wow, this is like some serious stuff. And your mission is strong. And to work with and we're going to talk a little bit about that NFL. That was a key. That was a large organization right there to be working with.
Yeah.
But like before we even get into the NFL, talk to me about like that mission and like how you guys are redefining like the narrative when it comes to sun protection.
Yeah, for us, it's really around like education first and foremost, because it's so key and so important. For me, seeing like the American Journal of Dermatology and all the clinical trial data that's been coming, I'm like, what? Why don't we know about this, or why don't we talk about this as much? And I think now we're in a different world, especially a lot of men are caring a little bit more about their health, and those sorts of things. Like this is could be another barbershop talk at the end of the day. Like, hey, your skin checked out? Like, you all good? So for me, just with the mission is like, how can we at least start and spark conversations so that at the end of the day, for me, this is bigger than being a beauty or lifestyle brand. I want this to be a preventative health platform first and foremost. Because we don't need to level up. At the end of the day, there's so many of us dying from things that we actually don't need to die from, whether it's diabetes and these sorts of things that are like preventative things. So for me, at the end of the day, especially for us Black and brown folks, I'm like, we need more information and more access. So we're not dying from shit that we don't need to be dying from in the first place.
You are so correct on that. The statistics show diabetes and all these other things, that stuff that like it's in your community, right? They're like it's like they put it down on us. They're like, oh, you know what? In the grocery stores, it's not like you find these, a lot of organic stuff. I remember growing up in the inner city of the Bronx. It was like that. It's like I didn't know about a Whole Foods until when I got into college. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's a Whole Foods. And they were like,
Mhm.
oh, it's more organic stuff, more healthier stuff. And then it's
Mhm.
like those things sometimes are not around those communities, which in turn kind of puts us, far back. But if you're hungry enough and you're smart enough, you'll go after it. You try to find it
Yeah.
and start bringing it back home, letting your family members
Exactly.
and friends know, like, hey, look, there's some stuff out there for your skin. You should probably look into it. Or
Mhm.
there's some nice products that you should be using for your hair. One of the previous
Mhm.
guests talked about natural hair and the products that she uses and the company line that she has. So it's beautiful
Mhm.
to hear that there's things out there, people out there that are constantly thinking about, elevating our community.
Mhm.
Now, with that being said, let's dive a little bit more into that NFL. Like you mentioned the NFL. Like, come
Mhm.
on, that's massive. That's
Yeah.
that's not. It's like this ain't no corner product on the corner of the street. This is like we had you with the NFL. Like, could you
Mhm.
highlight like that wonderful partnership that you have working with the NFL?
Yeah, and it was birthed right after, we did our activation in London with the whole festival, and the team that worked with us, Undercurrent, shout out to them. We're like, how else can we continue to promote the brand? And they presented a few different ideas, and I saw the NFL. And for me, it was sort of important. Like, I was the one member of my family that wasn't truly athletic. I had butterfingers, two left feet, but as I left high school, I got a scholarship from Lovie Smith, who's the former head coach of the Chicago Bears, to go study entrepreneurship and international business at Pepperdine, and then went off to Northwestern Law. So for me, it was a full circle moment to then be a partner of the NFL, especially since, as you know, like 60 to 70% of the players are people of color or black men.
Yeah,
So it's just like
100%.
this is a whole group that I'm going after, that I want to educate, that I want to empower. And in our community, we are still, really influenced and look up to folks that look like us that are in sports, media, and entertainment, because that's one of the very few examples where we see ourselves really just climbing the ladder, getting more access to wealth, building generational wealth. So I was like, what better organization to sort of partner with, just from the demographics of the majority of the people that actually support this huge engine. There's some greater things, obviously, with the organization, but just with at least the people themselves, I was like, this is the group that I'm going after. So I want to empower them and be there. So for me, like, this whole NFL partnership and activation was just a full circle moment to then have, like, 14, 15 years later, now I'm sort of partnering with them in this space and being able to use their platform, their logos and all it, next to my product and brand and logos. It just feels so dope. I was just out in
Mm.
London for the last 3 weeks at the London Games, and to see our ads, see our logo, to see just everyone being able to be exposed to our brand, I'm like, I did that. And then out of all these UK, Ireland partners, I'm the only black owned business that is partnered with the NFL. So it just even shocks me even more. Like, there's just so much as it relates to the machine of the NFL. To at least just have a little piece of part of it, and just to know that we are another business that is partnered with the NFL, and one of the few. You look at North America, probably Rock Nation is the only other one.
Mm-hmm.
With Jay-Z, but at the end of the day, it's just aspirational. It's inspiring. It just brings me a lot of joy. I'm just excited to see what else we can do with the platform to really push this education initiative forward.
Mm. You are just got your hands full right here. You
Yeah.
got you, and it seems like obviously there's going to be some stressful moments at that, but you definitely
Hmm.
wear these hats very well.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
I admire that. It's definitely a true inspiration, and it's
Thank
obviously goes
you.
back to the culture,
Hmm.
from their upbringing, from mom,
Yeah.
and and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Now, in regards to your time at working in corporate, like you're also a part of mentorships boards as well. Am I
Hmm.
correct? Like you're
Yep.
not, so you there's another tier to it all. It's like I do this, but I also do this, but I'm also doing this as well, right? So,
Yeah.
but honestly, you are probably one of the best people for the job because of the knowledge
Yeah.
and information and more importantly the experiences you've gone through. And even like you
Hmm.
said, you've visited 55 different
Yeah. Yep.
55. That's just
Yeah.
that's just beautiful within itself. Traveling is a great way to understand yourself. It's also a great way of kind of understanding the world and what's going
Yeah.
on in the world and what people are actually going through, seeing it firsthand versus like watching it on the news where they kind of like sugarcoat things for you or make you want to see the things that they only want you to see. So for you to be on the ground level, traveling and seeing other Black and brown people in other countries and being like, you know what, the NFL is a good thing, but it's also these individuals that need this product as well too.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit more about this mentorship and your connection to like the boards.
Yeah, so I do spend some time, mentoring other founders and other individuals that are like trying to break into venture capital, or innovation consulting, or all these other areas that I've had the pleasure and opportunity to touch. Because I think it's just important to sometimes hear from people not only that have done the role, but also people that look like you and probably can understand your experience. Because sometimes being Black in corporate America, if you're not Black in corporate America, there's just so many extra nuances of that experience that just someone else can't be able to share with you. So I do love spending my time, just mentoring, advising, and just being a sounding board for other people that look like me that want to get into these spaces. And outside of that, when I was alluding to earlier around that personal and professional, everything that I do is rooted for everybody Black. I've just been in this season now. Before, I used to say yes to everything. And I think one day when I write a book, it's going to be called In Search of One Yes. But I've just said yes to so many opportunities to expose myself to then figure out what I want to do, how I find that passion purpose intersection point. And now, this last season, as I said earlier, I was on the Global Inclusivity Board for Soho House, supporting them with supplier diversity, getting more members of color into the house to have access to this exclusive space, getting more leaders, hired to support creating this space, holistically. And then I've also been sitting on a university board out in the UK called the University of Birmingham and working on a 3-year project to decolonize their curriculum. So when I was saying earlier, it's like this whole sort of 3-pronged approach where I'm supporting Black folks in my day job as it relates to enterprise tech and venture capital. This stuff with Soho House is more on a creative level, work that I'm doing with the Definition Theater as we're trying to disrupt the Western canon of storytelling and make sure there's more stories by us and for us and from us.
That's the legacy.
And then finally, this work with the University of Birmingham, which I'm really enjoying, that's focused on decolonizing curriculum. Because you think being Black or brown, especially in the United States, as we've been hearing so much controversy with what they want in the curriculum or not, everything has been so centered around the European standard or the European centric beauty that you really do not see yourself a lot. For 18 years. If you go through primary and secondary education in the United States, you really only hear about yourself in a few different times, whether it's like the Egyptians, slavery, Jim Crow, civil rights, and maybe now for kids are getting Barack Obama in their history books. But that's it. When you think about that, what it does to you when someone asks you, like, who's the best philosopher, mathematician, like every time you're referencing these individuals, they're always probably of European descent because we don't spend enough time learning about the true and vast and beautiful history of all folks across the African diaspora. So that kind of does things to you. On a psychological level for certain folks, it's just been studied that I've been hearing a lot more as there's been more pioneers talking about deconstructing and decolonizing curriculum. So it is more inclusive. So more people see themselves in the history and the arts and the culture that they're learning. So it doesn't have these subconscious effects on us and our just ability to navigate this world. So yeah. As I said earlier, like just being able to touch all these different aspects of life, culture, education, access to capital and entrepreneurship. I think all these things are just so important for the advancement of our people and how we can continue to make an impact on this world that doesn't feel like it's rooted in struggle, but feels like it's rooted in abundance and joy. Because both things can be beautiful. We create beautiful things out of anything at the end of the day.
The culture shows that. The culture shows that, but it's good to not go through struggle all the time, right?
All the time, like, exactly.
We don't have to struggle every time, and if people pass the information on, freely, it would help in regards, not saying that people wouldn't struggle, developing and growing something. You're gonna have to put in the time, and you're gonna have to put the time, the money up. You're gonna have to, probably sacrifice a couple of things. But if
Yep.
we were freely passing that information along to the next generation, it would help in regards to longevity and helping to kind of create that generational wealth for the culture and for the people.
Exactly.
You learning how to set up your own business. Now you could, when you're down the line, you're passing it on to those people that you're mentoring. You're like, hey, look, now they're setting up their own company, and then it goes on. Or even just in the NFL, when those players are using the product, and then they pass it on to their kids. Right. And they're like, hey, look, honey, I got this new product that's working well for me, but let's pass it on to the kids. Let's start putting it on them, And now it's like it's being passed along. So it's a beautiful thing to watch, to watch something flourish and knowing that it just started, growing up in Chirac, and now look at it now. It'll be all over the world if that's the case. Now, with all of that said, we talked about a lot about your major accomplishments, and I'm glad that you have shared a lot of those accomplishments and some of those setbacks as well too. But I just want to know, what was like one of the lowest points for you that you felt like, even if you didn't feel like you were actually gonna get out of it, and like, how'd you come over it?
Whew, man, I think it's probably a bookend. I think the one time and period when, my mom was really suffering with a lot of mental health issues, and I had that separation from her for a period of time. That was really hard because that was at that pivotal moment between like boyhood and manhood. And you're like, what am I going to do? Everyone, that has been a part of raising me or creating me is no longer in the picture at this point in time and season of my life. Like, how am I truly going to push through? That was a very hard season to kind of get through, to be candid with you. And then fast forwarding, this past year, as I've been trying to build my black skin, my adopted father that took me in during that season when, my mom was going through her mental health issues. He passed away. He had a couple strokes, and I was playing caretaker, from December to probably May with my adopted siblings, Sarah and M, and then he ultimately passing on May 1st, and then dealing with funerals and like all of this is all happening in parallel to still having to show up, 110% at work and those sorts of things, and trying to do all these other things and supporting and pouring into others. It was hard, but I think for me, and just going through a lot of these life things like anyone does, I've really just been focused on building my emotional fitness and capacity because that has allowed me to at least stay grounded
Yes.
and sort of unwavering when life is blowing all its shit at you. I think just having that firm foundation in myself and being in tune with when I have capacity for things and when I don't, when I need to take a step back and unplug so that I can recharge my own inner source to then go back and serve other people. That was probably the main thing that really got me through a lot of these sort of trials and tribulations and on to the other side. And that's just a shout out to, my Jamaican upbringing and my mom, whether it's prayer, meditation, and those sorts of things, and just being exposed to so much of the world and just learning new language and techniques, how other people deal with stress in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was really just exercising and building and strengthening my emotional fitness. I think we talk about that enough when we talk about all of our external accolades and credentials that allow us, to sort of feel validated in this society that can be so materialistic. But doing that inner work, healing childhood trauma, building that emotional fitness, that's what's really going to get you through.
Because that stuff could take you out.
Exactly.
That could take you out. It's, if you don't have that emotional fitness, then it's hard to go back out into the streets and be like, all right, let's get this capital again. Let's keep the fundraisers going. When someone says to you, like, honestly, your product is not ready 5 times in a row, like, that emotional fitness is clutch. It's not even just a discipline at that point. It's not even just a consistency, because a lot of people might have that, but emotional fitness, that mental capacity right there, it to some people could be so small, but it's so big in regards to if you make it or you don't. And like you said, you trained yourself over the many years to really develop that muscle that you're able to endure those setbacks and then bounce back on your feet and come back even
Exactly.
stronger,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I must ask, because I do a lot of traveling myself. Like, I don't know if I visited 55 countries just yet, but I'm close enough. I'm up there. Now, which country was like one of your favorite places to visit?
Oh man, that is a hard question. I've been to a lot of spots, but like my quick answer, what I'll say though, I had a wonderful time in New Zealand because I love being outdoors, and it was just so beautiful over there, hiking, trekking, going skydiving, and doing all of like my adrenaline junkie sort of sports. But I had the most spiritually awakening trip when I was in Uganda and Rwanda for 7 weeks, and I took one little intercultural course in the introduction of Christianity to Africa. And one quote that always stuck with me, they said, in the beginning, we had the land, they had the Bible. In the end, they had the land and we had the Bible. And that has always stuck with me. And just sort of understanding my own spiritual journey and how we articulate that. And then favorite city right now has just been London. Yeah.
Okay, I rock with you on that. London's. Some people go back and forth between Paris and London, but I rock with the London. You know, I think Paris. No disrespect to Paris, I love it out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying, but I think London is sometimes overlooked. You know, when it comes down to that. But London got a certain type of swag. I like it.
Yeah, it
I
really
like
does.
it. No, it's good. And do you feel like these 55 countries that you have visited have helped you grow yourself professionally as well?
Oh, no, 100%. I mean, because in a lot of these key spaces, I had some sort of professional opportunity. You know, when I was in China, I was working at a startup LED manufacturer. When I was in the UK, I worked for Deloitte as a tax accountant and as a researcher in Parliament. You know, I did a medical mission in Fiji. So there's been certain spaces that I've been able to do things, and then being able to take that and have that on a resume or talk about that in an interview, it's always a shutdown. People are like, what? I even know you could do that kind of stuff. And it's been really cool being able to have these sorts of opportunities, and also just to see how Black folks live across all these different countries, because we're everywhere.
Yeah, that's you are right. That's right.
Like,
We just not in Chicago.
Exactly.
You know, when you see the world, you get to see so many different things and different perspectives on how people live their lives. I remember being in Italy. I believe it was Italy at one point in time when I was on a tour. You know, mid-afternoon, like everyone takes a break. It's mandatory. Every store was closed. Every restaurant was closed. I'm waking up midday and I'm like, all right, you know, it's time to go get something to eat. I'm knocking on the door. They're like, I'm sorry, we're closed. And I'm thinking like only one place is closed. And then some lady told me in the just in passing, she was like, just to let you know, at 1 o'clock, everything closes and people are able to take naps and just relax.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. This is not happening in America. What are we doing here? This is not common. There's people out here who want to eat food. And she's like, well, you're going to have to wait until 2 o'clock. and no one was budging on that. Like,
look,
there wasn't someone. That's right. It wasn't like one person was like down the street with a sign saying, don't worry, I'm open. They were like, no, we all gonna stand close and we all gonna stay close. So I was like, once I saw that, I said, you know what? The mental capacity for these individuals, this is why they might live longer.
Yeah.
That's why they live happier lives, because they're dedicating time to be free and not to be like in those shackles of just work and work and work and work and work. So it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. So, I mean, and I just want to say it's been an honor to hear your journey and your story. And it's truly an inspiration, and hearing it from another Caribbean soul. Like I'm so appreciative, and to know that we have connected at this point in time, and to know that your story is out there. And now the listeners have an opportunity to hear that story. You know, and I want to know, is there any last words of advice you would give to like an immigrant professional based on your journey and your experience?
Yeah, I mean, just, sort of the simple things. Don't give up, pursue things that bring you joy and then allow you to make the impact and the purpose that you feel like you're placed on this earth to do. That's the main thing. And just giving yourself the space and freedom and capacity to just let things go when they're no longer serving you. I think for so long we've spent our time feeling like our lives have to be defined by one thing. And if we leave it, we feel like we're a failure. But this
Mm.
life is too short to
Yeah.
have those limiting beliefs. Like, release them, let them go, free yourself, have a process of unlearning, but really just focus on the things that bring you joy. And I think that's the lesson I would want to leave my fellow immigrants with
And
this
you
evening.
are doing that every single day. And it reads in your voice and it reads in your vibration. So, Dujon, thank you so much for being a part of the show today and really just expressing the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads, and just really keeping us grounded in what really does work for you. It's not
Thank you.
you do A, B, and C. All of those things have the same approach. The things that
Mm-hmm.
the concept in which your mother said as well too, right? You dropped a couple of gems that you live by, and I see that transfers to all the work that you do.
Thank
And
you. I appreciate that.
that's truly sometimes the secret to success. It's not how many things you could do. It's like you said, the one yes thing that you could
Mm-hmm.
do. The one thing that you could do, the two or three things that you could do consistently every single time. Because with those three or four things that you do consistently, right, it will always lead to some type of result in that direction. Now it's up to
Yep.
you to kind of develop it depending on what resources you need and stuff. So kudos to you. Keep doing what you're doing. Congratulations on the line as well. Much success and congratulations again with the NFL. And I want to let the listeners know if you want to hear more stories like Dujon, check us out on ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts.